Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. We are going to talk watches live from Los Angeles. This is your host, Young Brando. We are going to continue the coverage of the Louis Vuitton Prize for Independent Creators from yesterday night. It's about 20 watches. I don't think I've gone halfway, but I have less of an Instagram slant on this particular day. So maybe we'll get to the topic a little faster. Nevertheless, I think it's a great way to warm up, to think about watches, to talk about watches. You guys know I'm usually quite conscious about what I curate on my Instagram, but sometimes just things come up on my feed that I really want to write about, really want to think about. And it was one of those lucky days where I could dedicate both of my posts to something timely in a way. The first one is actually one of my favorite living watch designers and one of my all time favorites at any rate. It is Emmanuel Guet. You would know him from his work with Audemars Piguet. Um, Either it's the so-called Beast, that iteration of the Royal Oak that had at one time become even more popular than the original, the Royal Oak Offshore. You might know him from some of those extravagant and elegant gem set pieces that pop up in the auction circuit once every so often, or from minor details, right? The so-called military dial, which he himself calls aviator dial, that you can see on some of the sportier pieces from Audemars' past catalogs, or that elongated initials that form the two parts of a kissing déployant clasp. All those little elements and the larger projects are part of Emmanuel Guet's design legacy and horology, and he is still quite active. You guys know that I have talked about and collaborated with Denison Watches on their ALD collection, especially the stone dial pieces that have just come out. But you see, Monsieur Guet is someone who is just generally passionate about watches and all kinds of watches, and you know, at any rate, beyond some minority among collectors who primarily, I think, build their personality around hating Rolex, hating on Rolex, uh, basing their entire personality on not owning Rolex. Uh, Beyond that very loud minority, I have to say, practically every serious collector has at least one Rolex piece that they're pining for, that they're aspiring towards, or in fact that they have as one of the centerpieces of his collection. And Emmanuel Guet obviously here wears one of those Neo Stella Rolex Oyster Perpetuals that the brand revealed a few years back to much fanfare, which kind of crept up on the watch collecting audience, maybe even the brand itself, since it kind of shifted gears and discontinued some of the most popular options, in fact, with those colorful dials. This is the 36 millimeter with what Rolex calls the turquoise blue dial. Of course, everyone else simply calls it Tiffany blue. And you see Emmanuel Get is enjoying a nice drink on the shores of southern Italy. I'm guessing a blue Cosmopolitan, something tinted with blue Curacao. That's for sure. And he's also wearing a nicely faded chambray-looking shirt, of course, with one too many buttons undone, which is um, how you're supposed to wear a nice shirt if you're in close proximity to the sea or if you're on poolside. And he's also wearing the Oyster Perpetual 36 on his right wrist. That's the reference 126 triple O dash 0006, the turquoise blue, the Tiffany blue dial. I see you have started trickling in. Please do hit the like button in advance. I promise you that this will be a nice ride. We are already looking at something else that also cropped up on my feed, and I was very happy to discover. Inter Miami was playing against Pumas of Liga MX today in the in the Leagues Cup that pits MLS teams against Mexican teams from the Liga MX. Inter Miami actually won this tournament. It was the first trophy in the MLS franchise's history when they did. Messi was unavailable for this game, so he was actually watching it from the VIP box with his family. And you know what really attracted me beyond the specific model here is really his growth in terms of personal style. Um, I have followed. I'm old enough to have followed Messi's career in its entirety, and saw the numerous steps he took uh, in terms of solidifying his all-time great status in the game. But what really strikes me in the recent few years is how he matured in terms of his style as well, which is very relaxed, very casual, um, very much actually in line with his chosen residence in Miami. And at any rate, I think some of you might know that a lot of the greats of this game, of football, of soccer, especially if they come from one of the CONMEBOL countries, so to speak, one of the South American greats, usually retire in Florida anyways. Messi, of course, did so much more than that in coming to the MLS. We can discuss that later. But he has really, since he has come to the US, and since he became basically the talisman of not only his team but the entire enterprise, really, he has also embodied that role of being a style influencer of sorts as well, and he's really growing into it. Um, and here too, he's wearing a very casual, interesting shirt that has an overwhelmingly earthly tone, like a khaki brown, and it goes extremely well with this pink gold piece with its classic embossed ribbed sunburst brown dial. This is, of course, the reference Semi-128 Line 1R. It is the new 40 millimeter Patek Philippe Cubitus. The Cubitus, when it first came out, and I was in that camp. I still belong quite fastidiously to that camp. Um, was considered quite derivative. Um, the way it basically recycled the dial, the hands, the core of the aesthetic uh, of the watch that it's supposed to, in so many ways, replace in today's lineup. Of course, we're talking about the Nautilus. That's the big elephant in the room. And also, maybe more immediately, it somewhat alienated a good portion of collectors due to its outsized dimensions, right? And of course, that's the interesting thing with both Rolex and Patek, right? Because the rest of the industry, for the most part, seems to have um, jumped on the bandwagon of smaller watches, right? Increasingly, the new releases tend towards um, smaller diameters, mid-sized versions of some of their iconic designs, which may or may not be presented in a unisex manner or even a feminine manner with more ostentatious gem setting. But in either case, that's where the rest of the industry trends. Whereas Rolex and Patek, in fact, have, in some sense, gone the other way, right? Producing um, increasingly bigger watches. Of course, the jump has not been all that dramatic, right? You know, it really hasn't been. Um, it's not in Rolex's bag, and it's also not in Patek's bag to make those sorts of uh, qualitative leaps. They usually move at that glacial pace, very conservatively in working with fine millimeters and even less. Captain Kirk says must be the 40 millimeters. It is, because that's the one that was released as the 2025 novelty. And one thing that Messi always does is also to get the newest watches, the shiniest. And he has, in fact, uh, chosen the pink gold one. There's also the white gold version. And they explicitly market it as a more unisex option. But I think it also rectifies what was perhaps one of the more controversial aspects of the new collection at its launch. Those uh, enormous dimensions. So I'm glad they rectified that. For me, I'm still quite cold towards this release. I think, again, it just doesn't do it for me. It's not different enough from the Nautilus. It's not, to me, it still looks like, in a way, like Patek's take on Cartier Santos with a Nautilus bracelet. Feel free to offer your take in the comments, whether it is on the Instagram post or here in the chat. But that's where I still stand. But I do appreciate Messi's choice. It's very nice and complimentary. All right, we can slowly but surely move on to. Let me know if you still hear me. Move on to the main topic of our conversation today. Again, please hit the like button. It genuinely helps for a small channel like this, it really makes all the difference. We talked about a handful of watches from Louis Vuitton watch prize for independent creators. These are the so-called semi-finalists, a selection of 20 pieces, which will be, I think, finalized with 10 finalists. And I will go through them today. What I did yesterday, if you want to watch it later, was also to contextualize what it means for Louis Vuitton to organize this kind of competition and how this competition, this watch prize, actually takes its place within their larger move into the high horological market. Because Louis Vuitton, both at the level of LVMH, the conglomerate, which of course includes a number of watch brands like Tag Heuer, like Zenit, like Bulgari, but also at the level of Louis Vuitton, which itself, in terms of the manufacture and culture they're building around the centerpiece of La Fabrique du Temps, is in fact trying to become a creative hub for some of the best independent makers, right? They have integrated Daniel Roth and Gerard Janta brands, snapping them up from Bulgari and reviving them under their own premises. They have collaborated in the past with Recep Recepi and Kari Voutilainen with a very limited and exclusive run of some of their most interesting pieces with very unique touches that also make them compelling and special in a luxury take that only Louis Vuitton can offer. They have also, as the winner of this competition for its edition last year, for its inaugural edition, taken in Raoul Pagès into a kind of mentee position for at least a year into La Fabrique du Temps. So this is very important in reimagining Louis Vuitton as not only a luxury brand that also happens to sell watches, but as a serious player within the high horological space that increasingly tends towards independent makers. So let's jump right in with a watch that we didn't consider and that I actually simply shared with you on my thumbnail. So why not? Let's go for Lederer CI C39. Speaking of the general trend in watches that tend towards smaller diameters, this is exactly one of those moments, right? Obviously, a watchmaker like Bernhard Lederer, who is of German origin, but who is based in Neuchâtel, Switzerland, there's always a reason perhaps to go with something larger and bolder, something that offers plenty of canvas to display the unique designs and sometimes innovative complications. However, as with many independent brands, I think Lederer also realized that he needs to have a signature piece that is in a more, that has a more bite-sized presentation, and that's where the CIC 39 millimeter comes in. This particular model is, of course, the racing green, which is paired here with a pink gold case. And CIC is short for Central Impulse Chronometer, which features 2 independent barrels, 2 independent gear trains, 2 constant force mechanisms, 2 independent escapement wheels. So in fact, what it hides in a way under the hood, what it gives you as just a quick glimpse through the open worked subdial there at 10 o'clock roughly, is a very complex mechanism. I will see if I can actually go to their own page so we have a better visual. There we go. Even though this is a steel white gold case. Again, the dial, at least for a Ledra piece, is quite streamlined, relatively conventional. The 2 subdials, the dual chronometer subdials, so to speak, form a rather harmonious symbol, like an infinity symbol, as they merge with each other, as they partly overlap on the left hand side of the dial. And again, within that racing green dial, you have 2 tones of green and a few different finishing elements that give a lot of depth to what is, again, relatively speaking, a very simple dial for Ledra. Of course, a case back which has a beautiful sapphire crystal to display as much of the movement, which in fact has 2 chronometrically precise movements, in fact, as they have, once again, 2 independent escapement wheels, 2 independent barrels for the power, 2 constant force mechanisms, and 2 independent gear trains in whole. All components of the movement are decorated by hand. The power reserve is 38 hours minimum. And again, the watch is 39 millimeters in diameter. And even with that distinctly domed, kind of boxy sapphire crystal in the back, it's still under 11 millimeters, I think closer to 1075 than anything. And you see the different hues of green and the varied finishes that go into making this balanced dial. Hi, MCM. Yeah, I like it. Captain, I'm not a mathematician. No, joking aside, I don't know if you, I guess if you count it, Yeah, perhaps. I don't know. I still see only two, really. To me, the minute track and the center of the dial seems to be finished more or less in the same way, and same goes for the sec subsidiary seconds. Um, but anyway, I think there's enough going on in that dial that gives you a few different looks. That's for sure. And you see, they have that domed sapphire crystal in a sandwich, right? Where you have these beautiful um, nuanced distortions, but at the periphery, both by the movement and the dial, as we have just seen. And this is a close-up, of course, of those two independent escapement wheels. I think the price point is a little bit more salty than what we talked about in the pieces that we discussed as in part one of this live stream. 136,000 in Swiss francs. I believe this is a limited run of 20 pieces in each case metal, um, the white gold and the pink gold, and the two overlapping subsidiary dials form an infinity symbol on the left hand of the dial, which of course is a mirroring of the two independent gear trains that take on in full view when you turn the watch around. What's happening? Not much, not much. We are doing the second part. Of the Louis Vuitton prize. This was the central impulse chronometer in 39 millimeters by Bernhard Lederer from Neuchâtel, Switzerland. Let's go with something simpler. This is the L'Essentiel by Fabien Payet, who sounds very French to me, but is apparently based in Tokyo. This is probably the most classically refined and conservative watch that you see here, even though, again, there's a good balance between these semi-finalists of watches that are more mechanically complex and retrofuturistically designed on the one hand, and time-only pieces that tend towards smaller case sizes and time-only configurations. This falls on that end of the spectrum, or toward that end of the spectrum, with a 39 millimeter diameter and 8 millimeter thickness. L'essentiel, the essential, grand feu enamel dial with small seconds at 6 o'clock, blued hands, Roman numerals, I wanna make sure what the case metal is. It really looks like stainless steel to me, but still want to make sure. I mean, I'm assuming since this is a very this is an independent maker that makes what is essentially a very simple time-only watch. Probably you get your pick of the metal, but what is presented to the competition seems to me okay. All right, so it might be actually polished titanium. He is sold out of his first platinum edition that was limited to 3 pieces. So the one he submitted to the competition may well be titanium. Check it out here. This is a good, at least a better look onto the movement, which, as you can figure out, is a hand-wound movement with a power reserve right around 58 hours, with a main plate and its bridges crafted out of German silver. Gold cap jewel plates on the escapement. The movement beats at 18,000 vibrations per hour, 2.5 hertz. Again, with a slightly oversized balance wheel, which is aesthetically gratifying and is also a show of force if it is actually of chronometric precision, right? Because at the end of the day, there is a reason why watches that are produced in great numbers are usually tending towards higher frequency movements, right? Which are supposedly more precise, right? But that's not something that you can always take for granted. And obviously, a well-made, well-regulated movement does not necessarily need higher frequency to be precise. And also, with independent makers, there's also the point of trying to reach an optimal level of service intervals, right? A higher frequency movement means there's more friction, more wear and tear on the distinct parts, on the discrete parts. of the movement, of the gear train. So it is actually better in more ways than one to have a movement that's both precise and low beat, beyond the aesthetic concern of observing an oversized balance wheel through the sapphire crystal glass beating at a lower beat rate. A very traditional decoration, of course, with hand-polished angles, Côte de Genève on the bridges, elements of sunray brushing, black polishing. The price point, I wonder. The Platinum series is already sold out, though I'm guessing more or less it will be the same price. 60,000 Swiss francs. Which is the titanium series now. So that was the Fabien Payet from Tokyo, Japan, with his L'Essentiel. Hatzeman Monin school watch. These are two watchmakers from Saint-Aubin-Sorges, I guess, Switzerland. The saint names can be tricky sometimes. Collaboration between Victor Monin and Alexandre Hatzeman. A very beautiful piece. Let's see if I can actually find a website for them, which it's once again, at least they have an Instagram where we can perhaps get a closer view. They have an open worked version too, it appears. Or no, it's rather inverted, I believe. But that's not the one they submitted for competition. There we are. This is a subscription piece. It has basically an off-center dial in a regulator setting where you have at the traditional 12 o'clock position the hour hand, and they have won the FP Jaune competition. I think they tried to submit, or they rather submitted both versions. But the blue, the one that seems like the inverted version of the model was first chosen. Each version is limited to 10 pieces for this subscription. It comes in a stainless steel case that scales right under 40 millimeters, 39.5 in diameter, and 10.9 millimeters in thickness. The dial you see here, again, has instantaneous jumping hours at 12 o'clock with a malachite center dial. Minutes at 3 o'clock and seconds at 9. And there is a long single gong that you see here, which strikes at the top of the hour. It's honestly, it's a very cool design. As I was trying to say that in terms of design, sometimes European watches that we were looking at this competition, at this watch prize, can get a little bit stale, may be in fact quite conservative, and I have marveled at some of the two of the Chinese pieces that were submitted to this competition that I discussed yesterday, both Behrens and also the Möbius piece that was, I think, by Femme El Hout. But the Hatzeman Monin school watch certainly turns things on its head. Again, instantaneous jumping hours with a malachite center at the 3 o'clock position. You have the minutes. At 9 o'clock, you have the seconds. And then you have this single gong with a black polished hammer, which strikes at the top of the hour. I really like the finishing of the case too, by the way, which looks, which looks very lively with sharp bevels and nice contrast of polished and brushed surfaces as well. I really like this watch. It's kind of, especially in the green version, in the malachite version, it kind of looks like a kitten as well, that jumping hour dial. So that's very cute. Hey, Dr. Bob's Nightmare. Magic City says, awesome IG. I follow since a long time. And he says, upvoted. Thank you so much, man. I love it. I love it. Dr. Bob's Nightmare earlier says, I've seen 1 Hertz marine chronometers that are very accurate. Again, it's all in the watchmaking, right? A high frequency movement does not guarantee accuracy, is not necessarily a sign of chronometric precision, and vice versa. Dr. Bob's Nightmare says, Magic City, get the watch now. Don't wait. And Magic City says, it's early in my morning. First coffee, then I order the watch. That's great. Captain Kirk says, so that's what a bel canto is. Sure. I think I don't really, that watch didn't really capture my attention personally, but you got to give it to Christopher Ward for producing a full strike piece, producing a chiming piece at that price point. You got to give it to them. Guys, again, I thank you so much for your support. That you're here, that you're advancing the conversation from the chat is so valuable. And thank you also for the upvotes, for the likes. Again, for a small channel like this, it's my life's blood. For you to share my links, whether it's to YouTube or Instagram, it's invaluable. If you want to support me further, that's always an option as well, but I won't insist. YouTube provides you a number of different ways. And of course, there are some alternatives to that in the video description as well. So how is the pricing with this Hatzeman Monin piece? It's right under 60,000 in Swiss francs. Apparently all sold out now, but they are two young watchmakers that we are supposed to be on the lookout for. I remember at some point reading a feature on them. I think it was in Hodinki. Very cool. This was one of the semi-finalists of the Louis Vuitton Watch Prize. The green version of the Hatzeman Monin school watch by these two young makers. We're going to Germany to two young watchmakers, this time based in Glashütte, Thibaut Claes and Johannes Kalinic. The brand name is Kalinic Claes, I think, or maybe Clay. I don't know. My French is not really up to par, so you'll have to bear with me. I'm gonna try to see again if we can find the watch on their website so we can get better visuals. There we go. Einser Central Seconds Hong Kong edition. Wow. This is a run of 10 pieces with Hong Kong engraved on the main bridge and kind of a chocolate brown hand guilloche dial, of which the eccentric circle actually features a tremblage finish. That's where you see also the screwed plaque that carries the brand signature. I kind of like the unaligned screws that bolted in. I'm sure it will destroy some of the more obsessive collectors, but I kind of like it. The dial is mainly brown with cream accents. Um, the hands have kind of like a teardrop shape, of course, handmade with real 3 dimensions, complex chamfers, both inside and outside, step lugs. And the watch is already sold out, apparently. It was, excluding the VAT, some right under 35,000 euro, 41 millimeters in diameter, 11 millimeters in thickness. Not gigantic, really. 48.5 millimeters lug to lug, apparently. The outer ring of the dial, by the way, that has the minute track and the seconds track, is also hand hammered beyond this eccentric circle that has a crème blanche finish. So very fine and interesting piece. And the movement perhaps is even more captivating. And quite different than that classic Saxonian Glashütte signature 3/4 plate. You have a lot of open working and ornamentation. And there is also of course, the bridges, the open work bridges, are crafted from German silver, which is a particular alloy of nickel, copper, and zinc that has this champagne-like tint. The frequency, once again, is 18,000 semi-oscillations per hour, 2.5 hertz, 45 hours of power reserve at full crank. Again, the finishing is beautiful. It's like an entire lexicon, if you want, of finishing techniques with chamfered teeth on all the gears of the train, polished and beveled angles on the bridges and the plates. In this particular edition, of course, those floral engravings on the bridges as well, polished countersinks and chaton, blued screws. And I think there is, let's see if we can find the picture of this watch from profile, at least another version of it, another version of the Einser, because I think there's something, oh, look at that. There's a linear display, like a very unique way of displaying the power reserve, if I'm not mistaken. And I wonder if they have a handy picture of that somewhere. Let me try to see if anyone covered this watch. Okay, monochrome covered one version. There we go. Uh-huh. So basically there's like a porthole like glimpse into the movement from around 8 o'clock on the case band, where you have this linear display of the power reserve. Quite innovative. Indeed, Captain Kirk. And you know what that means, right? That corresponds exactly to the beat of the movement, right? 2.5 hertz, 1/5 of a second. That's the kind of thing that makes us tick. Dr. Bob's Nightmare says, I like the no-nonsense watch talk and timepieces. Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate you too. Appreciate you too. Hopefully, I will eventually make this sustainable enough where I can keep the lights on, you know, pay my bills, pay the rent. That's the dream. That's the dream. So we are looking at the Louis Vuitton watch prize, the semi-finalists. The last piece we looked at was the Hong Kong edition of Kalinic Clays from Glashütte, Germany. Their Einser Zentralsekunde, the Hong Kong edition of their Central Seconds watch. Again, most of these pieces are sold out. Some were still available, but the idea for Louis Vuitton is really to shine a light on some of these independent creators, which include, as we discussed yesterday, one of our own, J.N. Shapiro, aka Josh Shapiro, based right out of here, Los Angeles. And at the end, the one watchmaker they will pick will have the mentorship of the artisans, watchmakers, and engineers from La Fabrique du Temps, in addition to the grants they will receive from Louis Vuitton. DC6 titanium. This is a piece by David Kando, who is from Le Soya, Switzerland. Let me see. Uh-huh. There we go. Found his own website. It's a design that has both conservative and innovative elements. One that looks to the past, but really tries to merge a more futuristic vision. A retrofuturistic blend of tradition and modernity. it has at the traditional 7 o'clock 30-degree inclined tourbillon that has kind of a bubble-shaped crystal over it. And at the traditional 4 o'clock, you have the hour and minutes. And of course, the special design of the tourbillon cage basically helps that subdial double up as an indicator for seconds as well. Apparently, David Kando previously worked with Gégé Lecoutre and later also contributed to pieces by Beauvais, Ferdinand Berthoud, and MBNF as well. I love the dial layout, to be honest. The unique placement of the crown at 6 o'clock. Again, the eccentric placement of the 30-degree inclined tourbillon that's given the same prominence as the main dial that stands right beside it. The guilloche work that surrounds these two subdials and also finds its place under that central arc, so to speak, at 12 o'clock. That gives you a glimpse to the power reserve. Again, the case design is lovely. It has that sort of stirrup shape even, right? Where you have the two hinges where the strap almost latches onto the case. It's a 44 millimeter case, so it might strike you as a slightly larger, but again, that shouldn't really distract from this watch. Again, it's very unique. It's an interesting presentation, so there's some reason to justify the outsized proportions. I'm not sure if it's sold out. I don't think so. I don't think it's a limited run, really limited by production than anything. The price point itself, I think, serves to limit production because it is a $250,000, 250,000 in Swiss francs. Pardon me. This was the DC6 by David Kando. Let's go to Sokoku. This is Masa and Company from Tokyo, Japan. We talked about this watch before. From Masa's Pastime, a watchmaker and his workshop that has honed their skills, or they have honed their skills rather, on restoring antique pieces. But this particular piece runs on their in-house movement MP1 I think they started making their watches in the spring of 2024. So their efforts of independent watchmaking are just coming into fruition. Maybe his own webpage can give us slightly better visuals, most importantly of the movement. Oh, there we go. It's quite cool, isn't it? There's some value of of coming up with in-house movements. This was a 10-piece run. With their proprietary movement. And we have discussed this watch as an entry to the GPHG as well a little while ago. I'm sure you can find it in the channel. The dial is made from a distinct copper gold alloy, finished in a bluish black shade. The Arabic numerals on the dial are hand engraved. So is the brand's logo, which are rendered in a pink gold tone. The center of the dial is also engraved in a proprietary hybrid technique, as they describe it, that blends Japanese and Western traditions. And that same motif, as you would note, was on the balance bridge as well. The price point was around 68,500 in Swiss francs. Very, very cool piece from Japan. Masa and Company, Sokoku. As one of the semi-finalists of the Louis Vuitton watch prize. Well, we have discussed a lot of them, most of them. I will finish them today, but feel free to share some of your favorites. I was trying to copy the link, but I don't think I can do that for whatever reason. There we go. So feel free to let me know which one you like most. If you want me to talk about any one of these again that I talked about yesterday, feel free to direct my attention to that. Of course, the super chats are always helpful. The Peter Mambeda Seconde Morte is a great watch as well that I only mentioned by name yesterday. This is the 1967 deadbeat seconds piece. I think that's specifically the titanium version. It's the second series. Time only piece, self-explanatory, with a sweep center seconds that beats, right, rather than sweeps. So I made a misnomer there. I should have said with a central second hand that ticks, that beats. Of course, that's an interesting flex always, but it is, again, it is actually quite hard to produce deadbeat seconds as a complication, as a kind of obstacle, horological obstacle that you want to throw in your own way and make precise original movement like that in a way that the seconds hand performs a discrete jump in every seconds. The first series, I believe, was in pink gold. The second series is made in titanium with blue accents on the dial. A beautiful, unique movement. Let's go to their page. "25 pieces, executed in grade 5 titanium, bright blue dial, made by mlein for them, which is a transparent track for the hours. The caliber 171, if we can go into it here. There's a hand wound movement with deadbeat seconds, which relies on a secondary escapement for those deadbeat seconds, mounted on the 3/4 plate that you can see, with a complex 4-armed anchor. The train stops and the arrow-shaped anchor releases the spring-loaded deadbeat seconds wheel precisely every second. And it's that 4-armed anchor that has to be adjusted by hand to 1/100th of a millimeter. And the movement is again beautifully finished as well, with a lovely oversized balance wheel right here around 6 o'clock in reverse. Love that oversized ruby as well. That takes its place on the 3/4 plate. Swan neck regulator, also beautifully hand finished. That is the Pieter Mambeda 1967 dead seconds. Of course, they have made different kinds of watches, but this is in a way a nice entry into their universe. I think the next one, after they have also made a split-second chronograph, is a pure time-only watch that's going to come from them. Thank you, Magic City. Thank you. €2. Thanks for the great info. I really, really do appreciate you. I want to quickly grab more water. I do want to go with something slightly more complex. This is the Minerocci RD002. There's another Chinese-made piece by Chang Ku and Zhenyang Pan. I have not heard of them before. This is, again, one of those dials that, perhaps to pluck an example from the mainstream field, has that feeling of the Breguet Tradition lineup, where you have some elements of the open display layouts of the movement with some measure of more traditional wristwatch time display as well. Here you have an eccentric dial that is at 12 o'clock for hour and minutes, with a guilloche center and an upward facing arc at 6 o'clock for the power reserve. Which is 48 hours. The case, I believe, is made out of white gold, 38.5 millimeters in diameter and 9.8 millimeters in thickness. Sandblasted and brushed gold-plated bridges with mirror polished bevels. The bridges have gold chaton set with synthetic rubies. The screw heads are chamfered and mirror polished. This is a look onto the movement as well. An interesting piece. I think it's priced at 798,000 in Hong Kong dollars, which is which makes it a six-figure watch, right around 100,000 in US dollars. Let me pluck another piece while I grab another bottle of water. There's the Ventralis from M. Graver, which is a Hong Kongese watchmaker. Another brand that I wasn't familiar with before. M. Graver Ventralis. Ximing Yang is the name of the watchmaker. That is him. A regulator piece. As you take a look there, I will be right back. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. And I'll come back to finish our coverage of the Louis Vuitton Prize for Independent Creators, Part 2 for the 20 semi-finalists. Okay, we are right back. The Ventralis piece, I don't know how it's priced. Very lovely dial layout. And it is actually jumping hours. With a nicely domed crystal. Cool piece by the Hong Kongese watchmaker Shimin Yang, M. Graver, Ventralis. What did we skip? The Kudoke 5 is again a watch that we talked about before in the GPHG competing watches conversation. Of course, Kudoke has, as part of its signature in Kudoke 2 specifically, a 24-hour display, which is this domed, hand-engraved celestial disc. Here it becomes the centerpiece, completing one full rotation every 24 hours. Since it's divided to two parts, it also it also doubles as a day-night indicator very handily. And as you see, the night part, the moon part of that celestial disk also has one star suggestively shaped as an arrow and placed pointing towards the periphery, which allows you to read the time on that track with 15-minute increments. It's more of a romantic piece than purely utilitarian. Quite cool. This piece is 18,500 roughly in Swiss francs, 38 millimeters in diameter, 12 millimeters in thickness. And the signature look of a Kudoke movement, which I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I'm sorry. My mind is perpetually in the gutter. But I think this is one of the most phallic movements ever designed. I'm sure it is a traditional style, but people have always had dirty minds, so it's there. I can't unsee it, and I'm sure once I have spelled it out for you, you can't unsee it either. Hopefully it didn't ruin Kudoke for you, because I think these pieces are beautiful, a great price point for the kind of handwork and ingenuity that you're getting. The Kudoke 5 is of course more than deserving as an entry, and I hope it makes it to the final stage, both in GPHG and here for the Louis Vuitton watch prize as well. Tasaki, Face of Tasaki, Black Mother of Pearl. This is Fiona Kluger from Bern, Switzerland, with a beautiful rectangular shape, a very Art Deco style piece. It's let me see, watches, Face of Tasaki. There we go. Automatic movements, which actually perhaps is a more complicated look than the simple face suggests. We will go back to that. A very unisex piece in stainless steel, 35.6 by 24, 6.2 millimeters in thickness, so very traditional. Self-winding piece, but 38 hours at full charge. 5 bars of a depth rating, which is actually quite satisfactory when you think about it for this kind of minimalist looking dress watch. And the movement itself, the T001, I think is called. Is quite fascinating in its look. Let's take a very quick glimpse at that. There we go. The description said self-winding, but I'm almost sure that this is a hand-wound movement. Let's take a look. I have to say, neither Tasaki's website or Fiona Kluger's own website gives a great. It's not good for navigation, to be honest, but this is a great looking watch. Love it. MCM as a new name for the Kudoke movement, Kudonke. Yeah. Hit the like for that one. Beautiful. Beautiful. I actually want to have a whole feature at one point, maybe I should make like a 15-minute video about like top 5 phallic designs in watches, or top 5 sexually suggestive watches or something, you know, one of those automaton kind of pieces that have an erotic display. The Kudoke will take its part. Some of MB&F's designs certainly from the horological machine line will make the cut, I'm sure. What do we have? What do we have that I have not covered? The Rubenschutz Series 2, again, simple time-only watch with a periphery in guilloche, a number of different types of finishes on the dial. This is Series 2. Hand-wound time-only piece. 2 hands, seconds on the subdial. The dial is made Okay, let's scroll back to, it's a stainless steel case, 41.1 millimeters in diameter, 10 millimeters in thickness, with an exhibition case back, a sapphire sandwich, so to speak, with its proprietary movement, which has a 3D geometry, beats at 18,000 vibrations per hour, with a Daniel style steel center cock, nickel silver main plate and bridges. All pieces are numbered and signed. It does appropriate an existing gear train and escapement, but it is modified and hand finished to fit his own movement design, which has frosted plates and bridges. Rubenschutz is based out of Canberra, Australia. And this piece is actually priced at 15,500 Austrian dollars, excluding the taxes, which is roughly 37,500 in US dollars. This is the Rubenschutz Series 2. Fading Hours Quiet Club, Norifumi Seki from Tokyo, Japan. The piece is a little bit too Bauhaus for my liking, but the movement side is still quite intriguing. There we go. There's a little video, 6-minute video. We're not watching that. But here's that beautiful movement. Fully designed, engineered, and handcrafted by the master watchmaker Norifumi Seki in his Tokyo workshop. The dial is intentionally designed to be simple and pure, which was a point missed on me, I guess. Still, it is made of 2 pieces. There's an outer dial, which is shaped like a donut, which conceals the outer edges of the inner dial. The case is very uniquely shaped, crafted out of titanium. Here's a look onto the movement. It features an alarm-like function with a mechanical gong and hammer, similar to chiming watches, similar, for example, to a minute repeater. So when the alarm function is activated, there is a strike at the announcement of that alarm, which has a philosophical background. When the alarm function of fading hours is activated, the watchmaker writes, "We hope the wearer feels liberated from the noise of daily life, allowing time to fade into the background." The concept of fading hours came from a real life need we encounter daily. Our best work often happens during deep focus, but consistently entering and maintaining the state is difficult. People tend to use the alarm on their mobile phones to stay on schedule, but this meant having a world of distractions constantly within the arm's reach. As watch lovers, we realized that a mechanical watch could solve this problem. It's quite beautiful when you think about it. Appreciate it. $85,000 US, excluding taxes. Um, I like the concept of an alarm watch. I always did. And I like how that simple dial actually um, hides the complexity of the gong and hammer. That's all beautiful. But I guess since I'm not initially attracted to the design, there we go. G Gadwa is here. Yeah, I've been back for a little bit. Chili Badger says maybe I should term that video Brando's stiff choices. Magic City says Jacob and Co. Uh, no comment. I'm allergic to certain brands, and that may be the one that gives me the biggest itch, so to speak. It really ticks me off. Okay, so we discussed all this five. Viner, we did yesterday, the Tremblage dial, Minarochi, Ventralis, Sokoku, CIC 39, Kudoke 5. We did the Resurgence yesterday. Today we talked about the Kalinic clays, Hadzeman Mona. We talked about Famel Hoots Möbius yesterday. La Sentielle by Fabien Payet we discovered today. We talked about Behrens Kung Fu and Offre Paris Giverny Blue Train yesterday. David Kando DC6 Titanium we covered today. Only two remaining. Let's do it. We have Daiso Makihara from Saitama, Japan, with his Beauties of Nature, which is a very interesting creation. Again, not a design that captivates me immediately. It falls a little outside of my aesthetic. Let's start with the basics. 18 karat white gold case that is 42 millimeters in diameter. The watch has a hand wound movement that beats at 18,000 semi vibrations per hour. It costs 27.5 million Japanese yen, which means $190,000 almost. And bum, 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 bum. And the dial is what the watchmaker calls white eye and cherry blossom, based on traditional Edo Kiriko style. There's a 24-hour indicator at 10 o'clock position and 2 o'clock position at 12 hour. And a perpetual moon phase with a 1-day error in 122 years at 6 o'clock. And the hemp leaf pattern, both in the front and the back, is hand engraved. Again, a watch that pleases me more when I see it from the back, and I can say that about many human beings as well. Guys, thank you again for your support. You can always jump on yourself if you think the show needs a guest. I am actually covering the semi-finalists of the Louis Vuitton Watch Prize, and I came to the last piece, which is made by a Russian watchmaker, Anton Sukhanov. I believe he used to work as a chief designer for Konstantin Chaikin. He is himself a member of the AHCI, the Academy of Independent Creators. He is one of the foremost Russian watchmakers based out of St. Petersburg. Easter egg tourbillon clock also, of course, takes its point of origin from that tradition of Fabergé eggs. There we go. Beautiful guilloche decoration on the egg. Enamel details. On the top, there's a central flying tourbillon and what he calls the flaming balance. Inspired by Fabergé eggs of the great Russian jeweler Peter Karl Gustavovich Fabergé. He came up with this image of the Easter egg. Because those eggs always contained some sort of a surprise, right? A piece of jewelry, cleverly hidden, miniature painting, a portrait, or a mechanical curiosity. In this case, of course, it is actually that central flying tourbillon. as you can see here. The flaming balance wheel is kind of his signature that he used previously in the Pharos and Lotus clocks. And it illuminates the 3-axis tourbillon. Thanks to the luminescent inserts, the balance literally begins to glow as soon as the clock is in the dark. And the piece is kind of like a tumbler, apparently a piece with low center of gravity when it's lower than the value of the base rounding radius. Has this interesting property. It is a tumbler. It's a child's toy. No matter how you tilt it, it doesn't stay down. It immediately rises back up. So that's quite cool. The guilloche and enamel work, of course, on the piece is exquisite. With a 3 lotus buds cage made out of titanium and dyed azure blue by anodization. The time is displayed with a rotating ring, as you can see, and it has a 24-hour function integrated into it with this city's ring on the periphery of that tourbillon. Amazing. I don't actually know how much this piece costs. Anton Sukhanov, Easter egg price. I don't know, actually. But here's the link to his webpage. So if you actually want to continue, yeah, but who would love his face, right? So who cares? We have covered the 20 pieces that made it to the initial selection for the Louis Vuitton Watch Prize. In the first part from yesterday night, I talked about the context of this prize and the kind of moves that Louis Vuitton has been making in the high horological space for the last few years, beyond the conglomerates, larger investments in watch brands, and the kind of strides it's also made with Bulgari. I've talked about how Louis Vuitton is trying to create within its own premises a kind of creative hub for independent makers. And this is the second installment of the Watch Prize, which aims to bring into that fold ascendant, emerging independent watchmakers, other than the brands they already hold, like Cher Agenta and Daniel Roth, or the major makers that they have already collaborated with Recep Recepi and Kari Voutilainen, for example. Again, please hit the like button. Feel free to leave a comment after the video concludes, after the live stream ends. Again, I want to remind you that my channel is completely independent. It's not sponsored by anyone. There's no capital behind it. It's just me and you, which gives me full independence. I only serve one master. That is my audience, and I always take pride in that. But for this model to be sustainable, obviously, I depend on your support. Everything that you give onto this channel, of course, comes back to you, and you know this in terms of quality and quantity of content. So I really appreciate it. YouTube offers you a number of ways. Of course, super chats when you're leaving a comment, a super thanks. There's a possibility of buying or gifting memberships as well, which gives you access to exclusive content. And there are also other options offered to you in the video description that details them. In either case, if you share the link with other watch collectors, with watch enthusiasts, that's already a lot. It would mean a lot to me. You can also follow me on Instagram. I'm sure a lot of you already do, but if you don't, please do. Again, I'm more desperate for followers and support on YouTube than I am on Instagram. It used to be in reverse, but Instagram somehow took off, and I should be putting more work now into YouTube. And I appreciate all the encouragement you can give me. I want to again salute Magic City for his super chat earlier tonight. We have covered the Louis Vuitton watch price. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, any suggestions, any recommendations, any requests. You can always write them as a comment to one of my videos or to this live stream, even better. You can always reach me on Instagram almost 24/7. You can DM me. I respond to everything. I really appreciate you. Thank you for your spectatorship. Thank you for the constant commentary, questions, and other valuable insights from the chat. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your watches. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.